The miraculous catch of fish, defying marine biology. The miraculous catch of fish recorded in Luke 5:4-7 demonstrates Jesus' supernatural control over marine life that most people completely overlook. After Simon Peter had fished all night without catching anything, Jesus instructed him to put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch. Peter reluctantly obeyed despite his professional fishing experience telling him it was futile. The result was so many fish that their nets began to break and they had to call another boat to help them. Both boats became so full of fish that they began to sink under the weight. This miracle defies everything we know about fish behavior, as experienced fishermen like Peter knew the best times and locations for fishing, yet Jesus produced an impossible catch in conditions where no fish should have been present. The miracle demonstrates Jesus' authority over creation at the molecular level, as he either instantaneously created fish or supernaturally directed existing fish to a specific location in numbers that exceeded the physical capacity of the fishing equipment. The timing was precise, occurring exactly when Jesus commanded it, rather than following natural fishing patterns. This miracle is often reduced to a simple story about obedience, but it represents Jesus' complete dominion over the natural world and his ability to provide abundantly beyond human understanding or effort. The supernatural nature of controlling marine life behavior demonstrates divine power that transcends natural laws. Healing. The centurion's servant, remote supernatural power. The healing of the centurion's servant in Matthew 8:5-13 showcases Jesus' ability to perform miracles at a distance without physical presence or contact. The Roman centurion approached Jesus about his paralyzed servant who was suffering terribly, but when Jesus offered to come to his house, the centurion declared himself unworthy and asked Jesus to just say the word for healing to occur. Jesus marveled at the centurion's faith and declared, "Go. Let it be done just as you believed it would." At that exact moment, the servant was healed despite being miles away from Jesus. This demonstrates supernatural power that operates beyond the constraints of physical proximity, time, and space. The miracle reveals Jesus' omnipresence and his ability to affect physical reality through spoken commands regardless of distance. The healing occurred instantaneously at the moment Jesus spoke, proving that his power transcends physical limitations and operates through divine authority rather than physical mechanisms. This remote healing is often overlooked because people focus on the centurion's faith rather than the staggering implications of Jesus' power operating across space and time. The miracle demonstrates that Jesus' authority over sickness and physical conditions is not limited by geography or physical presence. Turning water into wine. Molecular transformation. The transformation of water into wine at the wedding in Cana, recorded in John 2:1-11, represents Jesus' first public miracle and demonstrates his power to alter matter at the molecular level. When the wedding ran out of wine, Jesus instructed servants to fill 6 stone water jars, each holding 20 to 30 gallons, with water. Jesus then told them to draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet, who tasted it and declared it the finest wine he had ever experienced. The miracle involved the instantaneous transformation of approximately 120 to 180 gallons of water into premium wine without any natural fermentation process or time delay. The molecular complexity of this transformation is staggering, as Jesus converted simple H2O molecules into the complex organic compounds that create wine's flavor, alcohol content, and chemical properties. This required creating new molecular structures, changing chemical compositions, and producing the sophisticated taste profile that impressed the wine expert. This miracle is often sentimentalized as Jesus helping at a wedding, but it demonstrates his absolute authority over the fundamental building blocks of matter. The ability to restructure molecules instantly reveals divine creative power that operates at the atomic level and transcends all natural processes. Healing the man born blind, creating new organs. The healing of the man born blind in John 9:1-7 represents one of Jesus' most medically impossible miracles because it involved creating functional organs that had never existed. Unlike healing damaged eyes, this man was born without sight, meaning Jesus had to create entirely new optical structures and neural pathways. Jesus made mud with his saliva and applied it to the man's eyes, then told him to wash in the pool of Siloam. When the man obeyed, he received complete sight for the first time in his life. The miracle required creating corneas, lenses, retinas, optic nerves, and the complex brain connections necessary for vision processing. The medical impossibility extends beyond creating physical structures to establishing the neural networks that interpret visual information. The man's brain had never processed visual input, yet he immediately gained not just sight, but the ability to understand and interpret what he was seeing. This miracle is often reduced to a simple healing story, but it represents Jesus' power to create complex biological systems instantaneously. The formation of new organs and neural pathways demonstrates creative authority that surpasses even the original creation of human beings. Withering the fig tree, instant biological death. The cursing of the fig tree in Matthew 21:18 to 22 demonstrates Jesus' power to cause instant biological death through spoken commands. When Jesus approached a fig tree looking for fruit and found none, he declared, "May you never bear fruit again." The tree immediately withered from the roots up, dying completely within hours. The disciples were amazed at how quickly the tree died, as normal plant death is a gradual process involving cellular breakdown over days or weeks. Jesus caused instantaneous cellular death throughout the entire tree structure, from roots to leaves, demonstrating power over biological life processes. The miracle reveals Jesus' authority over plant life and his ability to reverse the life-giving processes he normally sustains in creation. The speed of the tree's death defied natural biological processes and showed that Jesus could withdraw life as easily as he could grant it. This miracle is often overlooked because it seems destructive rather than helpful, but it demonstrates the same creative power that sustains all life. Jesus' ability to cause instant biological death proves his complete authority over the life processes of every living thing. Healing the woman with the issue of blood, power through touch. The healing of the woman with the hemorrhage in Mark 5:25 to 34 demonstrates Jesus' power operating automatically through physical contact without his conscious intention. The woman had suffered from bleeding for 12 years and had spent all her money on physicians who could not help her condition. She approached Jesus from behind in a crowd and touched the edge of his cloak, believing that even this minimal contact would heal her. Immediately, her bleeding stopped and she felt in her body that she was healed. Jesus sensed that power had gone out from him and asked who had touched his clothes. The miracle occurred without Jesus' deliberate action or spoken command, showing that divine healing power emanated from his physical being constantly. The woman's faith activated this power, but the healing happened through the supernatural energy that surrounded Jesus' person. This miracle is often focused on the woman's faith rather than the staggering implication that Jesus' physical body continuously radiated healing power. The automatic nature of the healing demonstrates that divine power was an inherent part of Jesus' being, not just something he chose to activate. Feeding the 4,000, matter multiplication repeated. The feeding of the 4,000 in Matthew 15:32 to 39 is often overshadowed by the feeding of the 5,000, but it represents a separate miracle demonstrating Jesus' consistent power over matter multiplication. After teaching for 3 days, Jesus had compassion on the crowd who had nothing to eat and were far from home. Starting with 7 loaves and a few small fish, Jesus fed 4,000 men plus women and children, with 7 basketfuls of broken pieces left over. The miracle required multiplying matter at the molecular level, creating thousands of pounds of food from a few small items. The mathematical impossibility is staggering, as Jesus increased the food supply by thousands of percent while maintaining the nutritional value and taste quality. Each person ate until they were satisfied, indicating that the multiplied food was identical in quality to the original items. This second feeding miracle is often ignored because people assume it's the same story as the 5,000, but it demonstrates that Jesus' power over matter was consistent and repeatable. The ability to multiply physical matter multiple times proves his absolute authority over the material world. Healing the deaf and mute man, creating functional systems. The healing of the deaf and mute man in Mark 7:31 to 37 involved creating or restoring complex auditory and speech systems that required multiple miraculous interventions. Jesus put his fingers into the man's ears, spat and touched his tongue, then looked up to heaven and commanded, "Be opened." Immediately, the man's ears were open, his tongue was loosened, and he began to speak plainly. This miracle required healing or creating the intricate mechanisms of hearing, including the ear canal, eardrum, tiny bones, cochlea, and auditory nerves that transmit sound to the brain. The speech restoration involved healing or creating the complex coordination between the tongue, vocal cords, breathing, and brain functions necessary for clear communication. The man not only gained the ability to hear and speak, but could do so perfectly without any learning period or speech therapy. This miracle is often overlooked in favor of more dramatic healings, but it demonstrates Jesus' power to restore or create the most complex biological systems. The simultaneous healing of multiple interconnected systems shows his comprehensive authority over human physiology. Walking on water, defying fundamental physics. Jesus walking on water in Matthew 14:22 to 33 represents one of the most physically impossible miracles because it violates fundamental laws of physics regarding density, buoyancy, and surface tension. Water cannot support the weight of a human body under normal physical conditions, yet Jesus walked on the Sea of Galilee as if it were solid ground. The miracle occurred during a storm with rough waves, making the feat even more impossible as Jesus maintained perfect stability while walking on a turbulent surface. When Peter attempted to walk on water, he succeeded briefly through faith but began to sink when he doubted, showing that this power was supernatural rather than natural. Jesus' ability to walk on water demonstrates his authority over the fundamental forces that govern matter and energy. The miracle required either altering his physical properties, changing the water's properties, or suspending the laws of physics in his immediate vicinity. This miracle is often spiritualized as a metaphor for faith, but it represents Jesus' complete dominion over the physical laws that govern the universe. His ability to violate physics demonstrates that he is the creator who established these laws and can supersede them at will. Healing. The paralytic lowered through the roof. Instant neurological restoration. The healing of the paralytic in Mark 2:1-12 demonstrates Jesus' power to instantly restore complex neurological systems and muscular function. The man's friends lowered him through the roof because they could not reach Jesus through the crowd, showing the severity of his condition and their desperation for healing. Jesus first forgave the man's sins, then commanded him to get up, take your mat, and go home. Immediately, the man stood up, picked up his mat, and walked out in full view of everyone. The healing required restoring nerve pathways, muscle function, and coordination that had been damaged or non-functional. The instantaneous nature of the healing is medically impossible, as paralysis recovery typically requires extensive physical therapy and gradual improvement over months or years. Jesus restored full mobility and strength immediately, demonstrating power over the most complex systems in the human body. This miracle is often focused on the forgiveness of sins rather than the staggering physical healing that occurred. The restoration of complete neurological function and muscular coordination represents one of the most medically complex miracles Jesus performed. Healing the bent woman, reversing skeletal deformation. The healing of the woman bent over for 18 years in Luke 13:10-17 demonstrates Jesus' power to reverse long-term skeletal and muscular deformation. The woman had been unable to straighten up at all for nearly 2 decades, indicating severe spinal curvature and muscle atrophy. When Jesus saw her, he called her forward and declared, "Woman, you are set free from your infirmity." He placed his hands on her, and immediately she straightened up and praised God. The healing required restructuring her spine, restoring muscle strength, and correcting years of physical adaptation to her condition. The miracle involved reversing the effects of 18 years of progressive deformation, muscle weakness, and skeletal changes. Jesus not only corrected the underlying condition, but restored her body to normal function instantly without any rehabilitation period. This healing is often overlooked because it seems less dramatic than raising the dead, but it demonstrates Jesus' power to reverse the effects of time and restore bodies that have been permanently damaged by long-term conditions. Healing the man with dropsy, reversing fluid retention. The healing of the man with dropsy in Luke 14, 1-6 demonstrates Jesus' power over complex medical conditions involving fluid retention and organ function. Dropsy, known today as edema, involves abnormal accumulation of fluid in body tissues and can indicate serious underlying heart, kidney, or liver problems. Jesus healed the man on the Sabbath in front of Pharisees who were watching to accuse him, then asked whether it was lawful to heal on the Sabbath. The healing required addressing not just the visible swelling, but the underlying organ dysfunction causing the fluid retention. The miracle involved restoring proper cardiovascular, renal, or hepatic function to eliminate the fluid buildup and prevent its recurrence. Jesus corrected complex physiological imbalances that modern medicine treats with multiple medications and ongoing management. This healing is rarely discussed because dropsy is not well understood by modern audiences, but it represents Jesus' power over some of the most complex medical conditions involving multiple organ systems and fluid balance. Healing the high priest's servant's ear. Regenerating severed body parts. The healing of Malchus's severed ear in Luke 22:50-51 demonstrates Jesus' power to regenerate completely severed body parts and restore perfect function. When Peter drew his sword and cut off the right ear of the high priest's servant during Jesus' arrest, Jesus immediately touched the man's ear and healed him. The miracle required regenerating the complex structures of the outer ear, including cartilage, skin, blood vessels, and nerve endings. Jesus restored not just the physical appearance, but the full functionality of hearing, which requires intricate connections between the ear and auditory processing centers. The healing occurred instantly during a moment of high tension and violence, showing that Jesus' compassion and power operated even during his own arrest. The regeneration of a completely severed body part demonstrates creative power that exceeds even the most advanced medical procedures. This miracle is often overlooked because it occurs during the dramatic arrest scene, but it represents one of the most medically impossible healings Jesus performed. The ability to regenerate severed body parts with full functionality demonstrates his power over human anatomy and physiology. Raising Lazarus. After 4 days, reversing advanced decomposition. The raising of Lazarus in John 11:1-44 represents Jesus' most dramatic victory over death, because Lazarus had been dead for 4 days and decomposition had begun. Martha warned Jesus that there would be a bad odor because her brother had been dead so long, indicating advanced decay. Jesus commanded the stone to be removed from the tomb, prayed to the Father, then called out, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out wrapped in burial cloths, fully alive and restored to perfect health. The miracle required reversing cellular death, decomposition, and organ failure. The 4-day time frame is significant because Jewish belief held that the soul departed permanently after 3 days, making resurrection impossible. Jesus demonstrated his power over death even when it had progressed beyond the point of any possible natural recovery. This miracle is well known but often underestimated in its physical impossibility. Reversing advanced decomposition and restoring life to a body that had begun to decay represents the ultimate demonstration of Jesus' power over death and biological processes. The miraculous coin in the fish's mouth. Controlling animal behavior. The miracle of the coin in the fish's mouth in Matthew 17:24-27 demonstrates Jesus' supernatural knowledge and control over animal behavior for practical provision. When tax collectors asked Peter about the temple tax, Jesus told him to go to the lake, throw out his line, and take the first fish he caught, which would have a coin in its mouth sufficient to pay the tax for both of them. The miracle required Jesus to know exactly which fish contained a coin, direct that specific fish to Peter's hook, and ensure the coin was the exact amount needed for the tax. This demonstrates omniscient knowledge of future events and supernatural control over marine life behavior. The practical nature of this miracle shows that Jesus' power extended to everyday financial needs and that he could provide through supernatural means when necessary. The precision of the provision with exactly the right amount for both Jesus and Peter demonstrates divine attention to detail. This miracle is often overlooked because it seems minor compared to healing and resurrection, but it demonstrates Jesus' comprehensive authority over creation and his ability to provide for practical needs through supernatural intervention. Calming the storm, controlling weather systems. The calming of the storm in Mark 4:35 to 41 demonstrates Jesus' authority over massive weather systems and atmospheric conditions. When a furious squall arose on the Sea of Galilee, the waves broke over the boat and it was nearly swamped while Jesus slept in the stern. The disciples woke Jesus in panic, and he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Immediately, the wind died down and it was completely calm. The sudden cessation of the storm amazed even the experienced fishermen who knew that storms don't end instantly. The miracle required controlling atmospheric pressure, wind patterns, and wave motion across a large geographical area. Jesus didn't gradually reduce the storm but commanded instant calm, demonstrating authority over the massive forces that drive weather systems. This miracle reveals Jesus' power over the same forces that he used in creation, showing his continuing authority over the natural world. The disciples' amazement at his control over wind and waves demonstrates that even they were still discovering the extent of his divine power.